almost every time, with some few exceptions, that I do go to teach, I have no idea what to say. Isn't that funny? So let's say in the last 3 weeks, I was in Vienna, Hamburg, Cologne, Rome, Paris, the south of France. Right. So I did a hell of a lot of talking in the last 3 weeks. And it was amazing to me to think on the way down here that I had no idea what to talk about. And this is really the state I live in almost all the time, which is one where there's no sense. It's very funny because the way the audiences are very spread out. It'd be nice if it was a little closer. That I don't really have any sense of knowing anything. And whenever I have to go teach, of course, it always does come out. It's never failed me. So you don't have to worry. I'm not trying to make anybody nervous. But that's part of the fun. Is part of the fun for me. I wouldn't want anybody else to have to go through it, but one reason that it's part of the fun is that I think that because the teaching that comes out of me is not anything that I really can hold on to myself. Whenever I do teach, it's always very fresh. But unfortunately, for it to remain fresh and very free and uncorrupted, hopefully by my own need to feel secure, I have to pay a price for it, which is always being empty-handed. And what it means to be empty-handed is that one really has no conscious sense of knowing anything in particular, you see. And one has no sense of knowing anything in particular, and at the same time, there's a very deep sense of confidence and of trust. And some people would also call it surrender. And this is actually what I've been speaking a lot about over the last 3 weeks or so. And it's what I've been calling really the paradox of enlightenment. And the paradox is very much really the one that I live, and therefore this is what I'm trying to really share with people. And it has to do with this paradox. Has to do with exactly what I've been speaking about tonight, which is really on the level of the personality, or that place where we know we do exist as an individual, right? Who has definitely had a personal history in time and space. That part of ourself can lay no claim to or seem to find in any way any particular object in consciousness that can be said to be that, that meaning God, truth, or knowledge, right? So you can just imagine what it would be like to be yourself. I mean, we're all individuals here. I think we're all individuals. And so you can just imagine what it would be like to be exactly who you were right now. I'm exactly who I am, and you're all exactly who you are. We're all as individuals, exactly who we are right now. Exactly. As unpleasant as that may be to some of you. But anyway. I didn't mean to offend anybody, but I've been teaching almost for 10 years, so I have a pretty good sense of how a lot of people feel about themselves. So I'm just daring to be honest, and sometimes people appreciate it, and a lot of times they don't. But anyway, just to imagine being fully who one was right now, without anything necessarily being any different. Nothing being different, that means there's no golden light, that's flickering out there in a ball, that you can be sure that everything's okay, because that golden light, that ball of golden light is there to help you feel that God is somehow taking care of you and you don't have anything to worry about. Right? So I'm speaking about being exactly really as one is right at this very minute. But the difference might be, the difference might be that one would be one wouldn't be seeking for anything. There wouldn't be any sense of insecurity that from which one would be seeking to escape from, right? And of course, the reason that many people enter into spiritual life and spiritual practice and go to see spiritual teachers, of course, is to escape from the burden of insecurity. So, imagining that one was not trying to escape from the actuality of one's own condition in any way, shape, or form, right? One wasn't trying to add anything to it. One was simply being with it, and not making any effort to be with it either, not making any effort whatsoever. So there wasn't any struggle to change. And one was simply who one was, except one wasn't seeking for anything at all. So in that condition that I'm speaking about, there's nothing particular there. There's nothing particular there, except trust. You see, except a very unusual kind of trust, a trust that is so deep that it really allows one to let everything be as it is, without needing to struggle, without needing to make any effort, without needing to add anything, without needing to push anything away. Okay? So the trust is so deep, you see, that one doesn't need to constantly look for some way to feel secure. And that's really what makes the miracle of enlightenment possible. And and so what I'm speaking about is really what I'm trying to describe to everybody. I try to describe this really to help people, because many people feel that spiritual awakening involves really adding some particular quality to one's experience that once it is experienced, in other words, peace, joy, bliss, light, something nice like that, that once this particular quality is added to one's own experience, then the presence of this particular quality, right, in one's consciousness or awareness of that particular quality, will give one a sense of security. Oh, the peace is there. That means everything's okay. That means I'm enlightened, I'm free. Or, the joy is there. That means everything's okay. That means I'm free. Or the bliss, for those who'd be lucky enough for that, is there. And that means everything's okay. You know, this kind of thing. Right? So basically people are seeking to somehow cultivate, in some way or other, cultivate the presence of some particular attribute, right? Cultivate the presence of some particular quality in one's own experience. And once that particular quality is discovered and has been cultivated, peace, joy, bliss, light, something like that, then once it's been cultivated and experienced, and one begins to derive a great sense of security from that, then one, of course, would begin to do everything that one could to sustain that particular experience, right? Peace, joy, bliss, light, or whatever it is. And as long as that particular quality exists, then that means that God exists and that everything's okay. Because as long as the individual, of course, has deep faith that God actually exists and it's not just some mere pipe dream, then of course everybody feels good. So, I personally don't think that what I just described has anything necessarily to do with enlightenment or to do with what real freedom is all about. And I think that's really why I kind of wanted to describe it. Because if we can really understand what it is I was just saying, or what I was really trying to describe, it had to do, I was just describing the cultivation of a certain kind of experience, right? A certain kind of experience, in this case, which may be a very pleasant experience. But the presence of any particular experience, including all the pleasant ones I just described, does not in itself necessarily have anything to do with freedom or enlightenment or the attainment of true knowledge, true knowledge, direct knowledge and wisdom. And I'd actually say to the contrary. I'd say to the contrary that what the state of enlightenment is really all about is very much the opposite of what I just described. And it has to do with the discovery of such a profound trust in life, and also in oneself. Right? We have to trust ourselves also because you have to trust yourself enough to be able to trust in life. And that's kind of a difficult thing, apparently, for most people to do. So, discovering such trust in life, and of course, once I say we have to trust ourselves enough to be able to do that, that there's no holding on to anything. There's no holding on to anything, even bliss. Even bliss. And bliss, of course, will come. And it probably will go. Maybe not in all cases. But that's usually how it works. And of course, if one is a true seeker, and there aren't that many of those around, but if one is a true seeker after, genuine liberation, then one is going to, sooner or later, going to experience bliss and find out what that's all about. But to be free, one isn't even holding on to that. One isn't clinging on to that for any sense of security. One isn't really clinging on to anything. And that's right. And if I begin to understand what it means not to cling on to anything at all, because of course if we can't cling on, if the rules of being free means we can't cling on to anything, even those things that give us, that make us feel happy, like peace, joy, and bliss, then of course, right, we have to be willing to do something much more difficult, which is not cling on to fear, doubt, and confusion. And believe me, it's much more difficult for most human beings to let go of fear, doubt, or confusion, or not to cling on to them, than it is to let go of peace, joy, or bliss. That's very interesting what I just said, and it happens to be true. That it's much more difficult for most human beings to let go of fear, doubt, or confusion than it is, right? Which means is to be without them, right? To not hold on to them at all. It's much more difficult and much more challenging, at least for most of the people that I've met, and I've met quite a few by this point, than it is to not cling on to the experience of peace, joy, or bliss. And if what I'm saying is true, and I personally have no doubt that it is, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's absolutely true. But in any case, if what I'm saying is true, then I think the implications of what I'm saying should be rather obvious. I hope they are. I don't know if they are, but I hope they are. So if we're not clinging on to anything at all, right, then anything's possible, and that's really the whole point. If we, whoever we are, and wherever we're located, are no longer clinging on to anything at all whatsoever, and are not making any trace, have come to that point, have come so far, where we no longer need to make any trace of effort, no longer need to exert our will, the power of our will, in any way, shape, or form any longer, in order to not cling on to anything, right? That would mean that nothing would stick to us. And that would mean that our trust had been cultivated or realized to such a degree that was okay. Because of course personally it has to be okay with us, for each and every individual, for each and every one of us personally, of course it has to be okay with us. For most people it's not okay. That degree of submission to the chaos of human experience, which is life, but it's the life that we all live as human beings, that is something that is, believe me, not really very attractive to most people, and more than that, is something that most human beings do find quite unbearable. Quite unbearable, quite overwhelming, even terrifying. But to be honest, if we want to be free, if we truly want to be free, then that's really what it's all about. It's really what one way to understand really what the goal of genuine liberation is all about. Because if we're not holding on to anything whatsoever any longer, all things become possible. All things become possible. And when all things become possible, what that means is that because we as individuals, whoever we are, because we as individuals are no longer clinging on to anything whatsoever, that is really synonymous with the state that is uncorrupted, and if it can be sustained, uncorruptible. What I'm speaking about is very delicate, it's very subtle, and not that many people seem to be able to do it. But if it can be done, it's a state that is absolutely pure and uncorruptible because nothing is being held. And when I'm saying nothing is being held, I'm not only speaking about feelings, spiritual feelings, or unspiritual feelings, whatever they may be, but also ideas, thoughts and beliefs also. Mm-hmm. And if we can find a way to be fully, to be fully who we are, and that's what I said before, as each and every one of us is right now, which also, of course, never to forget, and I always have to remind people listening to me that I'm speaking about us. So obviously I'm speaking about human beings. I'm not speaking about anybody else. If we are able to let go to the degree I'm speaking about, being fully human, being who we are, and everything that being fully human always implies, not avoiding any of that, then we would have come to a point, realized a state of consciousness where we were, because we were no longer holding on to anything whatsoever, we would have realized a degree of awakeness and alertness and attentiveness and receptivity that would make it possible for us to see very deeply and to know very deeply all the time. And if we want to be free, to see very deeply, I think is something that I think we have to become interested in, more than just wanting to feel good. Because it's very possible, in the name of one's own spiritual evolution, to kind of hypnotize oneself through some kind of spiritual recipe. And through this kind of self-hypnosis, we actually become rather dull and rather stupid. And that really doesn't have anything to do with the kind of depth that I'm speaking about here. But in order to really in order to experience the kind of depth that I'm speaking about, and in order to be able to not only experience it once, but in order to be able to sustain it, personally, we have to be willing to go quite far. You see, And by going quite far, it doesn't mean adding more and more spiritual experiences to our identity or sense of self. But it really has to do with quite the opposite of that. It has to do with quite the opposite of that, which is really letting it all go, including all the experiences also that some people may have had. And if we can do that, and once we've done it, once we've learned how to do it, if we can sustain that, well then it'll all be there. It'll all be there. And what will be there, has to do with this, the paradox that I mentioned earlier, the paradox of enlightenment. What will be there is absolutely nothing on one hand, absolutely nothing at all. And I literally mean that. Absolutely nothing. And on the other hand, absolute trust. And that's it. Nothing more than that. Nobody needs more than that. You see? That's all anybody needs to get through this particular adventure that we're all on in this particular dimension at this particular time. That's all we need. And unfortunately, if you added much more than that, it's very difficult to keep it very clean and very pure. So maybe we can stay quietly for a few minutes together. One of the problems I think with human life is that there seems to be so much between the individual and the rest of life. There seems to be so much between the individual and the rest of life, and also and apparently very much between the individual and actuality. And of course, what lies between the individual and the rest of life, other people, actuality, are so many of the ideas and preconceptions that we have about ourselves, about others, and about life as a whole, including ideas we have about the spiritual domain of life. But the degree of separation and isolation that so many people claim to experience, and the degree of conflict that seems to be an almost acceptable part of human life, it can be seen, as being a result of the fact that most people are really is somehow very separate from and apart from really the core of life, or really being in touch with life. Seems to be so much between the individual and life itself, right? And that's why most people seem to live in this kind of self-created cocoon. So in the condition of the state that I was trying to describe to you before we sat quietly together, there really isn't anything there. There really isn't anything there. There's only trust, which really isn't a thing in itself anyway. Trust really is the absence of tension or fear or intimidation. I mean, trust is not really trust. If one really looks deeply, trust is not an object. Trust is not a thing. It's not a feeling. Really, it's not. If we look closely, we find that trust is really the absence of feelings and ideas. Right? Trust is the absence of fear. So, actually, trust isn't really a thing. I just learned that tonight. I never knew that before. So, So therefore, in the state I was describing, and I'm describing, there really isn't anything there. There's only the absence of those qualities that make it so difficult for us to be truly in touch with life. That's it. It's not the addition of anything at all, but really the absence of so many things that create so much misery, not only for us as individuals, but I think for the race as a whole. Now, because I'm going to definitely give time for asking questions. Don't worry, we're almost there. Because there's nothing there, or because there is an absence of so many of the feelings and thoughts and ideas that make it so difficult for us to experience life directly and to see clearly and experience real depth. Because there is an absence of those things, we're able to see clearly, and we're able to be in touch. We are in touch. And when we are, you see, when we are in touch, in a sense, there's really nothing between us, whoever we are. There's literally nothing between us, whoever we are, and reality and life and life. There's nothing at all. Literally nothing at all. And if there's literally nothing at all between us, whoever we are, and wherever we are, and the rest of life, then this could be understood as what unity is really all about, or what it means to not be separate, and separate from what? Separate from life as a whole. Not being separate literally means that. And that's what unity means also. It means not being apart from the whole. Okay? So being not separate and being that much in touch with life enables us to experience directly, the truth of our own nature, right? The truth of our own nature, or another way to put it is also like the source of our own nature, the very source of it. Because you see, when all these layers, you see, that layers that create this sense of isolation, separation fall away. These layers are ideas and their beliefs. When they all fall away, when all the layers fall away, then something is uncovered. Something that, of course, has always been there. It has always been there, but it hasn't been apparent to us, or it has not been directly experienced most of the time because it has been covered. Is the very source of our own true nature, right? And and the different religions have different names for it, right? But it's the source, it's the ultimate source, and absolute source, ultimate source of who we all are, right? When there's absolutely no identification with any fixed notion of self, with any notion of being separate whatsoever, literally and absolutely, then this source, or this one mind, right, is known, is recognized, is discovered, and is directly experienced. You see, and that one mind, of course, is the source of all wisdom and all true knowledge. When I speak about true knowledge, I'm not speaking about physics. I hope you know that. I assume you do. It has to do with knowledge of the self, right? And the self that I'm speaking about, of course, is the one self which we all are. And when that is discovered, and when that is discovered and directly experienced and recognized as that, as one's own true self, then this is what's called self-realization. That's really what it's all about. Okay, someone had their hand up. Yes, hello. Okay.
Most of the talk has been about what enlightenment means. Could you say something about your opinion of how to get there?
That's what it was all about. That's what the whole talk was about, actually. Believe it or not. And actually it wasn't about what enlightenment means. We haven't gotten into that at all tonight, about what it means. But I was kind of, it was kind of a spontaneous teaching, which was really all about, how to be completely free. You see, because if you heard what I was saying, I was speaking about holding on to nothing. Okay? So, that's, that in itself is quite a lot to wrestle with. So then, one says, hold on to nothing. What could it mean to hold on to nothing? Right? So if then we begin to look into what it means to hold on to nothing, then we have to begin to find out, well, what are we holding on to? If we're holding on to anything, and the chances are pretty good that okay. So then the question is, what is one holding on to? And then when that begins to be uncovered, then we begin to find out why we're such a mess and why the world is such a mess. You see? And then we begin to find out when many of these ideas that we have and many of the ideas that we're holding on to in order to be who we are and in order to feel comfortable and secure in being who we are, when we part with them, what will be experienced automatically is lightness of being, right? It's what happens if you're carrying something very heavy and you put it down, suddenly there's a sense of being very light. Of course, nothing has been gained. Nothing has been gained, right? But we have been relieved of the burden of carrying something with us that was weighing us down. Of course, then when we put that down, then lightness of being is experienced, right? And lightness of being is experienced, in all, as peace, joy, or bliss. Okay? And then I was speaking about the danger of identifying the lightness of being itself, right, as being the object or the goal, right? Because I said then what would happen is the attention would become very narrow, not very wide and expansive. It would become very narrow and fixed only upon that particular quality of experience. I spoke about the danger of that. So I was really, going to quite a lot of detail about describing what it means to hold on to nothing. And then as a result, I was trying to describe how holding on to nothing, what becomes possible. You see, when we hold on to nothing, when we're willing to risk that much and let ourselves go that far, I was describing what becomes possible and what actually can happen. And in the end, I was describing really, just a few minutes ago, the impersonal nature of it. How what it's all leading to is a discovery of oneself, of being that the one self that we all are, when there's no notion of difference. And I'm speaking about something that is actual, that is literal, that is not that can be experienced literally. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes. You have to wait for that. It's very cold. I can't believe it. It feels like the winter. Oh.
When you talk about taking the risk to be free of everything, of having no attachment to anything,
Right.
including ideas
Right.
and past or
Including love and things like that.
including everything at all. And then you are nothing, say. Can you still, does that mean you can have no conscious choice of a purpose in life other than being free?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, so
That's good.
in that case, if everyone were free,
Yeah. Then there
would be nothing.
No, that's not true. No,
Okay.
nothing means no problem.
Yeah.
That's what it means. Nothing means no problem, but what we would have is paradise.
Okay.
Right imagine in the place of this miserable world we're living in, there would be paradise. That's what the result would be.
But if people gave up their attachment to perhaps showing the way to other people, how would those other people find it if people stopped wanting
Well, if one was attached to showing the way to other people, then obviously there'd be a problem there.
Exactly. So how would other people find out?
Yeah, but there's a presumption there. There's a presumption. I don't know how we got to this, but anyway, there's a presumption. There'd be some presumption that whoever the person is that was showing the way, and I suppose you're talking about me tonight, so I'm the guilty one. No, but anyway, well, I'm just going that one step farther to clear up any potential. That what you're talking about, that if there was some, but there's a presumption that there would be some kind of attachment to a particular role, right? For some kind of, that would have some kind of negative consequence. But that really came out of the blue.
Okay, can I just ask, are all attachments negative?
It depends the way we're using the word.
Are all attachments to be got rid of? To be gotten rid of?
No, I understand, but it all depends on the way we're using the word. So I, for example, would say that it would be very good to be attached to becoming a liberated and profoundly sane human being. Mm-hmm. That's something that would be good to be attached to that.
Okay.
So the answer would be no, but of course it all depends on the way we're using the words. Now, in the way that I was speaking a few minutes ago, yes, in what I was describing, there's nothing. There is literally nothing. There's no sense of knowing anything. Right? There's no sense of knowing anything particular, or of being anyone in particular. So if what I'm saying is true, that there's no attachment to knowing anything in particular, or there's no sense of knowing anything in particular, and no sense of being anyone in particular, then the attachment you're speaking about isn't there. Not in what I was describing. There's nothing there. I said except this trust. Yeah. And then I said the trust is not a thing, but it's what's there, but it's an absence of things.
Okay, thanks.
And then I was saying, what becomes possible then? You see, because look, in that, in what we've been speaking about together, there is nothing. There's no one. There's no one particular. You can't. Right? You can't be found. There's no individual. There are no individuals. There's no contrasts. Right? There's simply nothing. Right? But in that nothing, there's no fear. There's no doubt. And there's no, from nowhere is arising any need to move away, to move towards anything, or to move away from anything. There isn't anything. Now, the result of that condition, of that state, right, is freedom. Right, is freedom. Right, it's freedom, and also, I was describing that then there is no longer any barriers to knowledge, to truth, to self-realization, to truth, to the source of all knowledge, to that one mind, to the one mind of which we all are. You see, there's no separation then, and that is that expresses itself. But what's so interesting is that in the discovery of that, in the realization of that, in the expression of that, there's no attachment to it. And therefore there's not even any identification with it. This is the beauty of it. This is what's called purity.
It seems to me that what we're all hearing, it seems to me that what we're learning or knowing is, or hearing is kind of a preview to what we'll get in the next life. It's like
the next life. No, not me. That's not my style. No way.
All right, forget
this life.
Okay, but what I mean is,
forget about there is no next life. Forget it. Don't believe all that stuff. The minute you start believing, you know why? Do you know why? Because the minute you start saying, "Oh yeah, that's for the next life," it means that one's relationship to this life will be a little bit more casual, because you see. Yeah,
not at all. It means that you don't give up on this life.
Oh my God! No. Were you a Buddhist by any chance?
Not at all.
Oh no. Okay. Just checking. I'm sorry.
No. Oh, look, I probably just taking too much time. It's okay.
You're not taking too much time. No.
I just mean that if, in order to be free, as you've talked about, in order to risk giving up on everything, in order to just trust and have a relationship that isn't separate or individual, then it seems to be it sounds very much like a soul.
Like a what?
Like being just a pure soul.
Uh-huh.
And not being in a physical state.
Doesn't that sound very interesting?
Yeah, but that's it.
Yeah, but the point is...
There's nothing wrong with that, I know.
No, I understand that, but in my talk, I was speaking about all of us right now, as we are right now. I said, and as we are means including our fully human condition.
Yeah.
I said that. I think I said it twice.
Oh, I know you said that.
Oh, good. So I'm not speaking about being disembodied.
I know you're not.
Oh, good.
I'm not suggesting that you mean that. I'm just saying that the attainment that we're after by having non-attachment is very much a pure state.
Right.
And a
good.
soul state.
Was there something impure about the meat here? The meat? What?
No.
Oh, good. Okay, well then we're really communicating.
Okay. Thank you.
But the whole point is that what it was I was describing, and what it means to be a fully human being, embodied, are not separate in any way. And that's the miracle of it.
Okay.
That's the point. So, right, good. So, very challenging, but very fascinating, what I've been speaking about tonight. And what's so challenging about it, you see, is the emptiness that I've been trying to describe. You see, and that's just the beauty is the beauty of it. But it's also the most challenging aspect, really, of the teaching, and I think it's really the most challenging aspect of enlightenment itself, because it's very difficult for human beings to be able to realize everything and let it all go. See, and this is the perennial, I think, human spiritual predicament. This is why there are religious wars, which has to do with the personalization, the personalization, not only of the very mundane human experience, but of religious experience. And when human beings personalize religious experience, then then we just we discover the mess. It's a mess of confusion and conflict that doesn't have anything to do with the truth itself. Yes, hello. Okay.
I was just wondering, do you think the fact that humans are so dependent on language and words and, verbal descriptions of stuff, that's one of the reasons we've gotten into such a mess?
No, I don't think that words, thought is not the problem. Thought is not the problem, and speech is not the problem, right? Because thought and speech happen to be great gifts that our particular species is fortunate enough to possess.
But I think,
and so what I'm saying is, it's not thought or speech that really is the problem, but it has to do with what really motivates us to interpret our experience in the way that we do. See, and I think that thought and speech in and of itself never creates problems, but what motivates us to interpret our experience in the way that we do usually does.
Right. Well, I just know in my experience, I find it particularly easy to just cling on to verbal ideas or, as you said before, recipes. And, from things you read and from holding on to quotes or, things that were said by people that are meant to know what they're talking about, instead of letting go of that and trying to orientate yourself on something which doesn't have any words.
Okay. But actually, sometimes if you cling on to the words from someone who knows, right? What can happen is that those words can catapult one way beyond the familiar ground of one's own conceptual framework into a completely new way of seeing and knowing. That can't happen. That's why human beings throughout history have studied, the teachings of people who were supposed to have known, or maybe actually did know, and also listen to them speak. Not because they were interested in philosophy for its own sake, but because it's through listening to the words of someone who knows can actually give one a direct experience of going beyond one's own concepts.
Something that's always puzzled me in contemplating the profound letting go, being in a state of no thingness, is that our body apparatus is obviously...
Your what? Sorry?
Our body, mind, is still arising while we're back here, presumably in no thingness. There's the body-mind. What is our relationship to that body when in a state of total unity? Is it on autopilot? Is it purified in any way?
I think you find the answer to the question in actually reorienting or deepening one's appreciation and understanding of what liberation is really all about. So, liberation, in the way that I understand it, is not simply, an escape from the personality, from the body, from human life. You see, it's not an escape from it. You seem surprised when I said that. That was good. Right? Because if we want to escape, we can just blow our brains out. Or just, intoxicate ourselves, from morning till night. That's what escaping is all about. So, the point, you see, the point of, you said, spiritual teachings and spiritual experiences and insight, you see, is all very much part of evolution. You see, that I think true religion, like the religious impulse, in the race, and the religious impulse in the individual is, I recognize, as an evolutionary impulse, right? As an impulse to evolve. Okay, so the experience of insight, of letting go, of bliss, reveals to us the way, what's called the way. And the way is how to be what, fully human. How to be fully human, right? Without, right? Fully human means free from this kind of morbid attachment to selfishness, to fear, to ambition, etc., 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 right? Because that's the point. The point is not simply to experience some state that will remove us so delightfully from the misery of this embodied experience that we'll be able to bear it. Because we'll be experiencing so much bliss, we'll be able to bear being here, until the body drops, and then thank God it's all over. That's not, I know, many people do interpret it that way, but I don't interpret it that way, nor do I teach it that way. I think the point of spiritual teachings, and spiritual experiences and of insight is to help the individual to begin to evolve. So to begin to evolve means to begin to find the way and recognize the way, and also the reason why, the way and also the reason why they should begin to let go of this very morbid and nasty and mean-hearted relationship to a very self-centered relationship to life. Okay. Well, when that begins to happen, of course, the heart begins to open. When the heart begins to open, one begins to recognize what true love really means. One realizes love has nothing to do with receiving. It has nothing to do with acquiring. It has nothing to do with being the object of attention for any particular individual. It has to do with abandon. Love is really, true love is really a metaphor for total and unconditional abandon, with letting go, right, of everything, right, for life itself. Not for one's own sake, you see. Not for one's own sake, you see, but for life itself. And that's when the glory, there's a glory that's realized, and there's a glory and a majesty and a dignity that's realized. We say, I see, this is the whole point. This is the whole point of this exercise. This exercise called my life, because one's own life, right? Then the one finds the meaning in it. There is a meaning to all this and a significance to it. But the only way to directly experience it is we have to be willing to let go of so much in order to really begin to taste it and to experience it and to recognize it. And then suddenly it all makes sense. You say, I get it. I get it. I'm not here just to, just not to overcome my problems and to get, as much happiness as I can, while I can grab it. Right? You see, but I'm here to give everything, right, as an expression also of the whole. Right, that means in the biggest hearted and biggest minded way we possibly can. You see, and then human life suddenly begins to make perfect sense, because all of this existential curiosity is like, what the hell? Why is all this happening? Why am I here? I don't want to be here. Right? Because if one is reasonably intelligent and and begins to question, and I don't think that many people really do question in a serious way. And when they do, it's not for very long. But anyway, if one is reasonably intelligent and one actually does begin to question, you see, one begins to come up, none of it makes any sense. None of it really makes any sense. And then if we begin to listen to some of our greatest, philosophers, they tell us it doesn't make any sense. So therefore, if you then you find freedom and stop trying to, and ceasing to try and make sense out of it. And just, and all the rest of it. But, so the point of spiritual inquiry and religious experience and insight, the goal of it is simply not a removal or an escape from, but an ability to to unconditionally let go into this event. You see, because most people aren't doing it. You see, most people don't. When they go through life, it's like this, you know. That means being defended, protected, you see, and this is what everything's kept away. So what I'm describing is letting go unconditionally into this event, as terrifying as as it appears, you see. And it's in that kind of letting go that one finds one's own release, one's own liberation, and also one finds, you know, the whole purpose of being here. But that purpose has nothing to do with getting anything for ourselves, right? And in recognizing that, that's when one's own perfect liberation is found in this very life, in this very body, you see. And then not only is the struggle over, not only is this, you know, one's personal struggle over then, but then one finds oneself very, you know, very completely absorbed in fully being who we are and doing what we're doing, you see. And so we don't have, at that point, the individual doesn't have to struggle, you know, to be here now or to bring their attention into the moment or any of that other nonsense, because one is so fully immersed. You see, so fully, when was fully immersed, we're so fully immersed, you see, in the experience of being alive, you see, so fully immersed. It means we're not holding anything back, we're not keeping anything for ourselves, we're not waiting for anything in the future. So this is it, we're fully released then, and then life is maybe being lived fully, maybe for the first time, probably for the first time. The only time they ever let go like that is maybe when they fall in love romantically, you know, for a few days, maybe a few weeks, whatever it is. Maybe. That's a big maybe. But the only reason they're willing to let go then is because they're getting what they want. You see, then they get to be, you know, Adam or Eve or whoever it is. You know, they get to be the only and most special one. You see, and so for that, you know, which is a lot, that's quite a bit. So to get that, then they're willing to let go. But the reasons for letting go then are very kind of morbid, really, very morbid, and not really very, not really very special. Okay, thank you for your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
When you're speaking about letting go, I find at times that there isn't a strong enough part of me that's in charge that can let go. The identification with the condition seems to have the most powerful presence inside me. There is another experience I have, which is when I meditate. And over the last 6 months, I've been doing that in the mornings. And one of the rituals that I have is to kind of assure myself that this meditation period is only going to last like 30 minutes. Okay? And that everything is okay. For those 30 minutes, you can let go, you can close your eyes, you can forget about survival or forget about what you have to do afterwards. And when it's over, I assure myself that I can come back to solving the problems and dealing with the helplessness of life and all the conditions that are there.
Uh-huh.
But there isn't the real, I mean, at the end of that 30 minutes, there is sometimes like an after effect where for maybe 10, 20 minutes afterwards, I'm still and I'm still feeling centered.
That's a result of cultivating concentration. When one cultivates concentration, then there is an experience of peace. Right?
Yes.
But the peace that is experienced as a result of cultivating concentration and the ecstasy of holding on to nothing have almost nothing to do with each other. They're completely different things. People often mistake the peace that is experienced as a result of concentration as the ecstasy of liberation, and they have nothing to do with each other. Okay? Okay, they're two different things. One is a result of holding on to nothing. You imagine like it's jumping out of an airplane and screaming, wow, like that, okay? But there's no land there. There's no fear of landing. Hopefully. For the lucky individual anyway. Okay. So that, right, versus the pleasant, feeling from being undistracted by the past or the future temporarily, not troubled by it. They're very different things.
So, how do you make that bridge? I mean, if one is kind of...
Well, the way the bridge is made is by beginning to cultivate an interest in understanding what liberation really means and what it's all about. Now, most people all I do is this, okay? So basically, almost everybody that I meet are seekers, or people who are interested in spiritual matters and liberation. So what I found is, that in spite of the fact that more and more people tend to be interested in the spiritual dimension of life, more people tend to be reading spiritual books and all the rest of it, and going to hear different speakers, and traveling all over the world to see different teachers and all the rest of it. Very few people seem to really know what enlightenment is all about. Okay? Because I'm speaking about something very specific here, and I know when I use that word, I really shouldn't be using that word, but I can't help it. I don't know what else to use, because it's such a loaded word, and because people have so many ideas about it. But so the bridge really is beginning to acquaint oneself with what is it all about? What does it really mean? What is it all about? And that, and that of course meditation would be a part of it, but it's going to hear, people, who are supposed to know something about it, going to hear them speak, spending time with them, reading, and taking some risks with one's own life, you see. And then it's like anything you become interested in. When you become very interested in it, you have to begin to study it. But ultimately, this kind of study is ultimately the study of oneself. In the end, the whole world disappears, everybody else disappears, all the spiritual teachers, everybody disappears, and you're only left with yourself. That's where this study only leads one back to one's own experience. In the end, you see, so ultimately the study of this study always leads one back to one's own experience. Period. And that's the beauty of it, but it's also what's so challenging about it. But the way to bridge the gap is by becoming interested in the subject. But I think if you do become interested in the subject, though, it gets very dangerous, because then you start to find out, oh my God, this really is about me. And when we say it's about me, when one says it's about oneself, you see it's about everybody, always, in every moment. And the implications of what that mean get bigger and bigger and bigger, the more attention one gives to this subject, you see. And the point is, then we begin to see it's not a game. It's not a game. And when we begin to get in touch with what it's really all about, we begin to get in touch, directly with the fact that not allow, I hope this doesn't sound too absolute, but not allowing ourselves to be very concerned about this is very dangerous. Because what we begin to find is that if we allow ourselves not to be concerned, not to be very, very concerned, the likelihood is that we are going to be we'll be allowing ourselves to remain in a state of ignorance, in a state of sleep, in kind of a stupor. It means we'll be allowing ourselves to go through our own life, which won't last forever, in a stupor. And when we're in a stupor, we're seeing through a fog, right? And when we see through a fog, we stumble around. And when we stumble around, we usually wreak havoc, right? Okay. So so the more we look into this, we begin to recognize that it is imperative that we wake up from this stupor, that this fog dissipates, and that we're able to see very clearly, so we'll know exactly what we're doing. You see, why? So we will cease to wreak havoc and all the rest of it. And the more we look into it, we begin to see that the absolute nature of this. It doesn't have to. We begin to see it has nothing to do with personal preference, like or dislike. We begin to recognize, in a sense, the absolute nature of human life, the nature of human life as it is, as ourselves personally. We begin to see, oh my God, this is me. We begin to see this is me, and we begin to see that we are the problem. You see? So if we turn on the TV and we see, Bosnia or whatever horrible current tragic situation. In some sense or other, it's everything we're seeing outside ourselves is most of the time is an expression of our own confusion, of our own stupor. You understand what I'm saying? And then we begin to see that this is imperative, that it's imperative that the human race as a whole comes out of this stupor, and we begin to see that we are the human race. This is a direct realization. We are the whole. We're not separate from it. In this case, obviously, we're the race as a whole. Each and every one of us individually. And then we begin to see the enormous significance of our own personal liberation, right? Because now it can't be seen outside the context, you see, of all of life. You see, we begin to see we are the whole, right? And we can allow ourselves to continue this sort of self-deception. It doesn't really matter what I do. Nothing matters. Nothing ultimately makes any difference. We're all going to hell anyway. This kind of thing. Or else, right? Which is the easy way out. It's the easy way out. And, it's the one which, right? Many people choose. But when we go in the other direction, suddenly everything matters. Everything matters. And we begin to recognize everything matters because it's not just about our own life anymore. Our own feelings, how I feel today, how I want to feel tomorrow. It's something, we begin to see that our own life is never separate from, from something very big. And we are that, we are that, literally. And so if that's true, then what it is that we're actually doing, right, in our own life, it becomes all important. It becomes really, it becomes a very serious matter, but potentially very liberating also. And then, what we find out is how selfish we are or not. How selfish we are. How, at that point, when we've gone that far, then we begin to see, well, to what degree do we want to cling on to our neurosis, our misery, our delusion, our pride, or whatever else it is. You see what I'm saying? That we find out then, how much do we really, we're using big words like love, how much do we really care about love? How much do we really care about love? How much do we really care about it? About goodness, etc. And then it suddenly all becomes about us, and it can be, and so at that point, unless it's something we really are interested in, it's something we'd wish we never found out about it. It'll be a curse, it'll be tormenting us, hopefully. But anyway, it'll be like a curse, just, oh God, things were, as bad as things were before I knew about this, they weren't this bad. So that's why I said it's at your own risk. But this is true, and this has been borne out by all the experience I've had over the years I've been teaching. Seeing how, miraculously, and and the wonder of it, how each and every individual, lives in this deluded state where they are so lost in the drama of their own personal life, they really believe it's some very unique event. But being in the position that I'm in to meet hundreds and hundreds of people, all speaking about really these fundamental questions, it's basically the same. It's basically the same predicament. So this one's older, this one's younger, this one's black, this one's white, this one's American, this one's European, or whatever it is. But it's one predicament, you see. And each and every individual thinking, oh, this is some very special story. It's my life, it's very special. Have you heard about my, you know what I mean? It's not. So the predicament itself is one, and the solution is one, right? And the experience of the predicament is the same for all, more or less, right? And so is the experience of the solution. And so then we have to find out what we're interested, what kind of life we want to live, and how, you know, and what context we really want to live our own life. In what context do we want to meet others, right? In being an expression of the problem or an expression of the solution. You get my point? And it becomes very, very big. And then, but the beauty of looking at it this way is that we can begin to see our own liberation. We can then begin to see our own liberation in a very big context, and hopefully then, we won't fall into the trap of our own spiritual, our spiritual life just being one big ego trip, you know. Because if you meet a lot of seekers, you know, they seem to be more self-obsessed than people who aren't even on spiritual paths. Because they're so concerned, you know, they're so looking at themselves all the time, at the time, you know, and how they think, how they feel, you know, with so much intensity that when you know, sometimes they make the mistake of saying, how are you, you know? And then what happens? And then, you know, nobody really wants to know anyway, except great. And then sometimes, you know, you get a half-hour lecture and it's much like being tormented. Right? Or else, or the opposite can happen, that maybe they're doing well, maybe they've had some incredible realization, you know, a few days earlier, whatever. But still, then there's very much the sense of it being mine. It's being possessed, it's being owned, and how great it is for me and all the rest of it. And you see what I'm saying? So the whole point is really in what context are we really, you know, seeing our own life? And one of the most important things that I'm trying to share with people is trying to help people to begin to look and be able to see their own life within a very different context. You see, and that's really ultimately what can change one's own life in a way that's very dramatic, and yeah, and ultimately can have great significance, you know, for a lot of people. Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah.
Hi. I find that in letting go, when I start to let go, a lot of the time it feels quite unbearable. It can be unbearably painful, or, you know, even the bliss, whatever is unbearable. And that's when I try and, particularly the last 2 months, it feels a bit like, you know, I'm going to go mad or something. So
what's the good news?
Well, it's okay. I mean, that is actually okay, but I see that because there are times when I feel like I am willing to go mad. That's all right. That's nicer than being so bored with,
what?
You know, that in some ways that's nicer than being bored with the same old thoughts.
Much nicer, I would say.
But it's quite terrifying, and that's when I find myself.
What are you going to do?
away.
Life is quite terrifying, isn't it? Don't you think it is? If you really look at, you know, what's going on here, it's quite terrifying.
Well, it is, yeah.
Isn't it?
I see myself trying to sort of run away from that and go back into the fixed ideas, which are very boring. Right. It's like a tape loop. It just goes round and round, and that, in a sense, is even really more crazy than the craziness.
Right. So really
but it's this feeling of going mad that, I mean, I haven't lost it yet, but I think if I really do let go, I'm going to lose it. Right?
Well, have you ever been institutionalized?
No.
What?
No.
Oh, okay, because the point is that, that spiritual liberation is not something that one really should play with or can play around with. It's something that ultimately is, if we really do become overwhelmed by the majesty of what I'm speaking about, we'll be brought to our knees, right? By the weight and the force of what it is that's revealing itself to us. So it's not something really that we can play with. So the point is, yes, it's very big. The whole matter is very big. And I think that instead of just jumping into, meditation or certain, playing around with certain questions like, who am I and things like this, I think the first thing the individual should do, most people don't, is really ask themselves, what's really important. Because often people jump into spiritual practice without really having looked very deeply, into life themselves in a very serious way and ask themselves what's important. Because the point is, when one has looked very deeply and really found what's truly important, then one is willing to bear insecurity, fear, maybe even madness, and even joy, and even ecstasy, a lot of things that are actually unbearable. We're willing to bear a lot more. Why? Because we know what's important, because that's what makes it worth it, you see. But because most people haven't looked very deeply, and they're still basically just looking to feel better personally, their threshold of tolerance is very small. So they think, oh yeah, I want to be free, and then they begin to meditate, or they go to see a powerful teacher, or they begin to start playing around with some kind of questions, that could have powerful effects on them. They're not really prepared for the consequences.
Like you're saying, the more that I look, the more horrifying it is, and that's the most gets more scary. I mean, it
Look, the point, I understand what you're saying, but the only solution to your question
right.
is really by really, looking into life and deciding what's most important beyond any doubt. You see, because at a certain point when you make up your mind, then it's come what may. You don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. We all might go mad, after we leave here tonight. Okay? I don't know what's going to happen. Okay? But no one knows. But in the end, it really doesn't matter. Once we know what the most important thing is, in a sense, that's the beginning of the end of all our confusion. You see? And that's what makes it possible for us to bear so much more. Right? So to bear so much more. And that's really, I think, it's the question, it's the kind of questioning inquiry that most seekers really don't go into very deeply before they enter into, serious spiritual commitments. And so many people that I meet haven't really looked into this question, even though they may have been involved with spiritual practice for many years, had many spiritual experiences, but you really see, but what really is the most important, and they haven't really wrestled with it, and that's why they haven't found the strength to persevere and to face whatever it is that needs to be faced and let go of, whatever it needs to be let go of, and all the rest of it. But when we have no doubt what's most important, we don't lose our way. And if we do, it'll just be for a very short time. You see, and this is really the foundation, I think, the foundation of real spiritual practice has to rest on this kind of inquiry, and the thing is, if one feels that one has already done that, then the result of that kind of inquiry would be in a very elevated condition automatically. And if that's not the case, then one hasn't really answered those questions. These are not just intellectual questions, but we have to ask ourselves these questions as if our life depended on it, as if our very future depended on it, literally. Because if we just sit back intellectually, have a cigarette or whatever, a beer, and yeah, very interesting. So what is the matter? And then just go back home, and just live the same rotten life or whatever it is. It's a game, it's just a big game. And people who are quite intelligent can do that very easily, because people who are very intelligent can entertain themselves with their own ability to think, to think, really.
I guess what you're saying is that if I really want to know, then nothing's going to stop me.
Yes.
And even, say, going crazy, if that's how it feels.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. That's right. And in a sense, one has to be willing to go crazy to be free. Because believe me, we are all tested in every moment. Okay? But most people aren't aware of that. They're not aware of the fact that they're being tested. But the more you wake up, the more one realizes that this is true. I'm being tested in every moment. And the more sane that you truly become, because we live in an insane world. Okay? I know what I'm saying sounds extreme, but to some people it might sound extreme, but from my point of view it doesn't sound so extreme. Okay? But if we live in an insane world, if that's true, then imagine what it would be like if you became truly sane. You would be seen as being insane. And if everybody thought you were insane, you might actually begin to think so yourself and even feel like you were. What if everybody was saying, that this was, for example, a flower, and you said, but it's a glass. He said, and everybody said, no, it's a flower. You said, it's a glass. Right? And they kept saying it was a flower, and you kept looking and said, no, it's a glass. Then there's a question, either you're crazy or they're crazy. So, the solution to finding out the answer to that question is by becoming very sure what that is. And it could even be possible that maybe you'd be the only one who's recognizing that to be a glass, and everybody else would see it as a flower. Right? So does consensus, is consensus, what determines sanity or madness in an insane world? Not necessarily. So you do have to be willing to go mad, absolutely. Of course, we don't want to go mad. Okay. So maybe, okay, last question then, yeah. It's going to be a good one? Okay.
Hi, Andrew. You talked earlier about being insecure, very insecure, and also about there being nothing but trust. And I was wondering if you could say more about that.
About what?
Are you talking about those happening simultaneously? There being nothing but trust, and also bearing a lot of insecurity.
You can't have one without the other, really, can you?
Well, it seems if you're...
No, it's a good question you asked. But if you look, it's very interesting to see you can't have one without the other. Because if there's no trace of insecurity whatsoever, trust doesn't exist. So the answer is, yeah, you can't have one without the other. But having both and having neither ultimately have the same result.
Well, it seems to me that if I'm completely insecure, that it's very difficult to have complete, to experience nothing but trust, because
yes, of course,
it's like the insecurity is very
right,
overwhelming. And
right. But the point is, of course, you see, because as I said tonight, we're speaking about being human beings. We're not speaking about being gods. We're not speaking about being... I heard angels are very big in London. Sorry. But anyway, no, I'm not really. But I'm not speaking about being angels or anything else. I'm speaking about being fully embodied human beings. So so part of being fully human means we're also going to experience all kinds of things, no matter who we are, including insecurity. Okay? But obviously it's our relationship to the experience of insecurity, not the fact of the experience itself that determines whether we're free or not. Right? Mm-hmm. Because you see, we need to have a view or a perspective, a spiritual view and perspective that's able to embrace every aspect of what it means to be fully human, right? Because when we have a teaching, a spiritual teaching that doesn't fully embrace our humanity, then in the result is going to be some kind of avoidance or denial of our humanity. And the result will ultimately be corrupted, distorted. You understand what I'm saying? So we need a teaching that's going to be able to embrace every aspect of what it means to be fully human and show us the way to embrace every aspect of what it means to be fully human without needing to avoid or deny any of it. That will enable us to be truly free, completely free, very much fully in the midst of this very human experience called our own life. You understand what I'm saying? It's the whole point. So the insecurity in the sense that we're speaking about is not the problem. You see, because I said, what if there's an experience of insecurity? If you want to just escape from it or get away from it, we're going to miss the emptiness. Right? We're going to miss the emptiness, and of course the emptiness is where liberation is found. So insecurity in and of itself is not the enemy. It can actually be a great friend.
I'm still having difficulty grasping how insecurity and trust can, the kind of trust you're talking about can exist.
Well, it means that it's
simultaneously.
okay. Well, it's just very simple. It means that it's okay. Look, let's say one is experiencing insecurity, right? Either it's okay or it's not. If it's not okay, there's going to be trouble. If it is okay, there's not going to be any trouble. It's really that simple. Either it's okay or it's not okay. If it's not okay, then there's going to be trouble. And if it is okay, there's not going to be any trouble. Okay? So, because what are we going to do? So insecurity, okay, let's make it worse. Let's say it is lust. Let's make it a little bit more down and dirty. Let's say there's lust. Well, if it's, let's say it's not okay. What are we going to do? Are we going to run, to confession? Or what are we going to do? It's not okay. What are we going to do? Blow our brains out? Try to burn, pour gasoline all over our morbid flesh and rid ourselves of it once and for all. If it's not okay, what are we going to do? If it is okay, let's say there's lust, for example, and it is okay, then it doesn't need to be a problem. Okay, or if there's fear, which is what everybody, most people can't really deal with effectively or know how to have any relationship with it that expresses true sanity. What if we're frightened and it's not okay? What are we going to do? We're usually going to wreak havoc because people are frightened. They commit murder, and if they don't literally commit murder, they're willing to do awful and barbaric things to each other that are not always necessarily physical. Okay, because they're frightened. So if we're frightened and it's not okay, the result is going to be the misery and horror of the world we're living in. But what if we were frightened and it was okay? You see what I'm saying? So I think that really answers your question.
Yeah. It's just that you're saying it's just a question of deciding that it's okay. I can, really deciding it. I mean, like that.
Well, but it's a pretty big decision. It's kind of like it's bigger than getting married.
Right.
That's one of those. Oh my God! Should I or shouldn't I? This is a big one. I mean, I'm gonna have to spend the rest of my life with that person. Oh my God! I don't know. So no, it's a much bigger decision than that. That's very paltry compared to what I'm speaking about.
I think what I mean is that when you're feeling insecure, it's choosing to see
right.
that that's okay.
That's true. But in relationships, since I am speaking about enlightenment, I'm not speaking about therapy. Okay, so a therapeutic or small-minded, that's my particular interpretation of it. The therapeutic or small-minded interpretation of what I said tonight would be, I'm feeling insecure. Andrew said it's okay. So, it's okay. And then you just tell yourself it's okay. Yeah. And then you survive, the current kind of, upheaval, and then it goes away and say, he was right. It's okay, but that kind of thing. But then it's just used. It's used in a sense to pacify one. Okay. That's not what I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about, literally, as I said before, jumping out of the plane without the parachute. So, and jumping out of the plane without a parachute is a metaphor for our relationship to life, our own personal relationship to our own personal life. Okay, so obviously, jumping out of a plane without a parachute and having nowhere to land is a metaphor for being completely free and totally unattached, right? The ecstasy of it. You're just simply free falling, right? And at the same time, one's fully here, fully here, fully here. At the same time, one is fully here. Now, it's that free falling that makes it possible to be fully here. It's that free falling that makes being fully here not a problem, and in no way an interference with the free falling itself. Okay, so part of being fully here might be lust, fear, insecurity, etc. See what I mean? So the free falling is a metaphor for freedom. So the only way to realize a condition where insecurity is no longer going to be able to rule one's life, or no longer be able to intimidate, would be after one had jumped out of that plane. Because it's the free falling itself that enables one to not be intimidated. It's the free falling itself that enables one not to be intimidated. Because listen, if you've already let go, what can happen?
So would that mean that you'd have to be in an enlightened condition in order to be, that free falling would be
Yes.
some sort of in order to not be intimidated by?
Yes. In order not to be intimidated to the degree that insecurity would in no way inhibit one's own perfect liberation and the expression and manifestation of it, definitely. That's the whole point.
So there are other degrees. Is that what you're saying, that there are other
Well, why
degrees?
be
Are you saying
busy-
it's black, just that it's
Why
one?
why be busy with degrees anyway?
Well, no, that's
Just-
because you said degree. I was just wondering.
Oh,
Because
okay, maybe
yeah.
I did, but don't be concerned with it. You just want to
Okay.
be concerned with going all the way in the shortest amount of time possible, because one has an extraordinary life to live.
What I was trying to understand is if the relationship to insecurity you're talking about is only possible if you're in that state of free fall.
Right.
So that's, yeah.
Right. That's right.
Right. So if you're not in that state of free fall, then
One's going to make a mess of it.
does that mean that it's not something that you attempt to do then? It's not to take that sort of relationship to insecurity, because then that's a more therapeutic approach.
we hopefully, and I can only speak for myself, but hopefully we all want to do very well, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yeah.
Don't we all want to die knowing that we gave everything?
Yeah.
That we gave everything, and that there was nothing left undone. Nothing left to overcome, to become, and nothing left to overcome. It's all finished. It's all over. It's all finished. It's all over. Nothing is unfinished. Nothing is unfinished. Nothing's unfinished. Do you see? Isn't that how we want to die? Huh? So not only is that how we want to die, but that's how we want to live. Because unless we can live that way, we'll never be free. Right? Good. So maybe we'll just sit quietly for just a couple minutes together.